everybody, I'm Bree the Plant Lady, bringing you my top pick for January interest. We've had now 3 weekends of winter precipitation, and there's one plant that has absolutely stood out as the most interesting, fragrant, beautiful, providing me of joy plant, and that would be Edgeworthia Chrysantha, the paperbush. I have quite a few specimens in my garden, and I thought I'd show you what each look like after we've had some real winter weather. Well, we'll start right here on the edge of the woodland. We have a couple of Edgeworthias planted. This is Edgeworthia Chrysantha Snow Cream. It's been planted for 11 years. You can see it's about 5 foot by 5 foot, and it's planted on a berm here in the woodland swamp. Behind it there's actually like a stream bed, and in front of it stays really boggy, but it gets relatively well enough draining soil to do well. These started to bloom really early this year because of how warm we were over the holidays. But even now, through 3 weeks of like pretty cold weather for this area, zone 7 just south of Raleigh, they've slowed down a bit, but they aren't damaged at all. It's really remarkable just how tolerant these plants can be. Now here's another Edgeworthia Chrysantha. I think this one is Gold Rush, and it's much smaller. It's been planted the same amount of time as the Snow Cream that I just showed you, but this is significantly shorter. I'd say this is less than 4 foot tall and about, yeah, maybe 4 to 5 foot wide. Now I've not done any major pruning on either of these in the woodland because these get extra protection, particularly early in the season when we have like early or sudden frost. You see they're right here on the edge of this woodland swamp. But let me show you a plant that did suffer a few years ago from a sudden hard frost in November. So this was my original Snow Cream, planted back in January of 2010. And it grew really well, and it was, gosh, 2 or 3 times this size until we had a really hard first frost in November of 2019. And you can see it, these original main branches died to the ground, and now they're starting to rot. But I had to cut back all of the original wood to the ground, and then this is what has reflushed since. But you can see it's covered in flower buds, and this one's a little bit later than the ones in the woods because it's more exposed. But there are some yellow flowers starting to open. I can see this from my kitchen window. Here's an Edgeworthia that was planted just about a year ago as a 1 gallon, and it's growing quite well here in this foundation landscape. This is probably the most exposed. It gets a lot of direct sunlight, but I think it's gonna look beautiful over the years as it really fills in this corner with that Carex as a ground cover. Now I know I've showed this before in garden tours, but because this is a video all about Edgeworthia, I wanted to show you the difference between these two variants or possibly different species. Right here is Edgeworthia Chrysantha. This is what I call Edgeworthia pepifera. You can see overall the plant is significantly smaller. These were planted at the same time back in January of 2011, not 2010. But you can see the flowers are much smaller, and they're also much later. These usually bloom 6 to 8 weeks after the Christantha. The stems are much smaller. So everything about this plant is like more dwarf. And you know, you compare it here and you see how, you know, large these stems are, how big the flowers, and the overall stature. There's a couple different varieties of Edgeworthia pepifera. Let me show you one that I have growing in a pot. So here is Akabono, also sometimes called Red Dragon. And you can see again how it has really small flower buds, thin stems, not showing any color yet. This has kind of an orangish red bloom instead of the yellow. For me, this really struggled in the ground, and I think maybe it was an issue with nematodes, but since I potted it up, it's doing much better. In the summer, I make sure that I give this water on a regular basis. It's really convenient and easy because you see, there's a hose bib right there. Of course, the shining star of the winter garden is this accidentally planted Edgeworthia Chrysantha snow cream that was rooted in an episode of Growing a Greener World, and it actually rooted in through the pot, and it's been growing that way super happily in a French drain right here on the north side of our garage. And you can see it's just absolutely covered in flowers, and it's really a spectacular plant. Let me give you a close-up. I've been harvesting flowers from this for nearly a month to do floating flower arrangements, and you can see how many more there are. I could make an endless amount of floating flower arrangements with all of these blooms. It's really cold today, and they don't have as much fragrance. They're more fragrant on milder days, but it's a nice like honey smell. And you can see enormous branches. In 2019, this was the plant that didn't have any cold damage at all from that sudden frost, and I'm sure it's because of this location. I mean, I would never have planted an Edgeworthia here. This is my workspace. But I'm able to kind of prune it back as needed. I always do the pruning in the winter when it's blooming so I can enjoy the branches. And it's almost like espaliered. I hope you've enjoyed my January top 5 plants and will consider growing each of these. And I look forward to doing this again in February. I've created a playlist, so be sure to subscribe so that you will stay in the loop for all of my great plant recommendations. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Happy gardening.